Hey everyone, I'm Andy.
And I'm Sean.
And this is the Commander's Brew.
This week, talking about removal.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 88 of the Commander's Brew. We are talking about removal today.
Yes, we are.
We're doing
now,
it.
Normally, you'd come by, you'd hear a couple of decks from us, or a deck, and we'd do it on a budget. We'd do it under $50. This format's a little different. Every now and then we do a talking about episode because people have been asking about removal. So we're like, yeah, let's talk about removal.
That's right. So we're talking about all manner of removal. We're talking about spot removal. We're talking about mass removal. We're talking about creatures, artifacts, enchantments, all the removal.
Removing stains from your pants.
That's right. We're talking about when you have to ask someone to leave a party.
Yep.
We're talking also. Yeah.
You got a big couch on your front lawn. The garbage truck won't pick it up. You got to get that taken care of.
Get that out of there. You got to call the Got Junk guys or whatever, right? Also, just hitting the backspace key on your keyboard whenever you're typing.
Yeah, right?
That is technically removal. So this will be a 15-hour podcast, and this is hour one.
Yeah, right? 15-part.
15-part series of removal in general. Yes.
I know we're joking around, but this could be a 15-hour episode. The removal is, once we started digging on removal, this rabbit hole is never ending.
No, it's big.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about removal.
It's funny because we thought let's do a talking about episode, and that way, it'll be like, we want to build a deck. We just have to look up all the cards and stuff, and then it might be a bit easier. Wrong. So the scope of this episode is so huge, and we even just had like a half-hour discussion about this before we started recording.
Yeah,
and we were just like, you know what? Let's just go.
Sure. So the game plan, as I understand it, is we're going to divide it into colors, and then we'll go to multicolor stuff. We'll kind of highlight our favorite pieces. We'll mention some classic pieces. We're going to keep a lot of them under budget. Some of the classic pieces are not budget right now, so we won't be able to go too deep on those. And hopefully we'll find a couple of surprises in there that you may have never heard of before.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's colors. That's the stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we're probably not going to go super deep on, like Sean said, like stuff that you already kind of know about. We don't want to just spend time telling you why Cyclonic Rift is good, for example.
Right.
Hopefully you already know that part. So yeah, hopefully the main aim is to just get in deep, talk about the ideas behind it, how we like to play with the removal we like to pick, and things like that. So you get a little bit of insight, hopefully on that. But before we get into that, let's play a little ad from our friends over at Wizard's Tower.
All right.
Have you had a long day revolting against the consulate? Are your shoulders tense from fabricating non-stop for hours and hours on end? Well, come on down to the Girapur Spa. Take a load off. Relax your sore muscles in our hot springs heated up by the factory pipes next to the ether factory, where you can smell the fresh ether-filled hot computer argon air, while little servos massage your tense shoulders with their pointy little robot fingers. And while you're enjoying that, have a snack brought to you by one of our roaming tigers. Don't move too fast, they don't like that. And while you're waiting to dry off, feel free to stop in our kiosk of the Wizard's Tower, wizardtower.com. We'll give you free shipping if you order $15 in singles to Canada or $10 in singles to the US. And that order will give you 3% kickback automatically for your next one. Why not use coupon code Tower of Brews to get an extra 5% off that order? When do the deals end? They don't. That's the beauty. And neither does relaxation. Just try not to make any sudden moves, and if you hear roaring off in the distance, probably better run with those loose legs.
Oh, wow. I like relaxing as much as the next person, but I don't know if I want to relax that bad.
I've never wanted to relax so bad that I'd put my life in danger for it, I guess. I guess that's my philosophy regarding relaxing.
It's probably impossible to relax with a tiger present.
Exactly. That's I mean, there are people in the world who can do it, I suppose, but
sure.
I do not count myself among them.
No.
That's cool. Of course, if you go and you buy cards from Wizards Tower, you're helping support the show in that way because they support us. So you know, it's a big circle of life type thing. But also, if you feel like supporting directly, you can do that as well over at Patreon.com. You can become a patron and give as little as $1 per episode. You get some cool perks that way, some cool merch. And we do deck renos and stuff for our patrons and other little bonuses and stuff like that. So head over to patreon.com/commandersbrew if you'd like to help out the show that way.
Yeah, and can I just mention we got a deck reno coming up soon. And one of our patrons, Daniel Young, sent us a cool package.
That's right.
He's out of Atlanta, and he puts collections of cards together on the theme of hip hop songs, and they fit in a deck. This one was from Rosa Parks by Outkast.
Yeah.
And it's all Jund. All the decks could go in a Jund deck. It's great. It's so fun. I'm not gonna read all of them to you, because
I think we're going to turn it into a little video.
Yeah, we're gonna present it.
We're gonna
present it separately.
Yeah, we're gonna present what Daniel presented to us essentially, and show everyone it because it is really great. He's actually done it twice now. I tweeted about the last one and played a little video I think on our Twitter, but we'll make it a little more formal this time because it's so good and it's some bit of work went in there from Daniel. So thanks Daniel for that. Very, very cool. This is funny because we just came off our Brew and Brawl yesterday.
It would have just happened.
Exactly. We are recording this ahead of time, so we don't know what happened. But Brew and Brawl is our last Sunday of every month.
That's April 30th.
Right. So we got one coming up now in a bit. So yeah, get in there over at twitch.tv/commandersbrew. Help us build a deck, then play the deck with us. It's fun. We do it on Magic Online. It's always a great time. Slowly easing ourselves as well as other people into Commander on Magic Online, which isn't as good as playing in real life, obviously, but it's it helps you get used to playing Magic Online, and then once you do that, you can draft every once in a while when you feel like it online, and that's not bad.
Yeah.
Cool. Like we said, this is a big episode. So
ooh. The one thing we won't talk about is our one banned topic.
All right, you had to mention that. Yeah.
Midichlorians.
Right. Yeah. It's banned. The idea that the Jedis know about the
Are you
Force
talking about them?
through tiny microscopic beings in your blood is banned. We will not talk about that.
Yeah, you're getting on the border of talking about it just by explaining that.
I just had to mention what it is and how silly and ridiculous it is.
Yeah, okay.
Do you want to do this?
Let's do that later.
Yeah, okay. I agreed. Okay, so there's a fun little tease. There's something coming up later. Okay, well, let's get into it. Let's talk about removal.
So, Andy, when you build a deck, how do you approach the removal?
Gotta have it, obviously.
Yeah, gotta have it. You gotta have it for creatures.
Yeah.
You gotta have it for artifacts. You gotta have it for enchantments.
Yes, exactly. Must have for all of those things. Mass removal is the best way to do it, I think. Whether it's creatures or artifacts, enchantments, and so on. Mass removal is better in Commander, obviously, because of the multiplayer aspect. If we're going to kill one creature, why not just kill all of them? Especially if they're only your opponents, but yeah.
And that comes down to a card advantage thing too, right?
Completely,
It's you have to be able to handle with enchantments, Because if your opponents have a Mind's Dilation down, you got to get rid of that, or that game you'll run away with that game.
How many games have we seen where that just is not like someone plays Mind's Dilation and then just has it out for 2 or 3 goes of the table and then they just start winning? That's it.
Yeah, right. So you need to be able to deal with enchantments, but the trouble with removal is it's 1 for 1 most often.
Mm-hmm.
Like I spend 1 card to get rid of one of your cards. Maybe I spent less mana, but in the long run, I'm down.
You and that person are each down a card, whereas the rest of the table is not, right?
Right. So this is why we like mass removal. But you gotta have some spot removal from time to time.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need to kill something or exile something,
right.
or whatever, right?
So what we're implying though is that if you're gonna look at spot removal, it probably has to be instant.
Yes, the best, of course, is always instant. That way you keep your options open. You're flexible that way. Maybe you even have some other things that the more instant things you get, the better it all gets, right? Because no, I'm not going to use my, instant speed kill spell, but I will instead play my instant speed draw spell, right? And you can swap those as you see fit. Obviously, I mean, this is just basic, magic philosophy, basically. But that's why instants are obviously better. Although some sorcery speed removal is still good, still decent, and has other upsides that would make you want to run it.
Right. It has to have some kind of upside to be run over its. I can't think off the top of my head of any sorcery speed removal that doesn't have an instant equivalent.
I can. I think.
Okay. Well, when we get there, you'll let us know.
I'll talk about it. There is something in a different color. Does that count?
Oh no, I'm talking within a color.
Yeah, within a color. I think I have a decent example that I'll bring up later.
Okay.
But anyway, so that's the general aim that most people come at it with. I tend to not worry too much about the card disadvantage thing, just because it is. Generally, also we build in a lot of ways to draw cards in our decks in Commander, and as long as you have that covered, like you're not going to worry too much about when an Eldrazi was coming at you and you managed to exile it. It's like that's good, that's great, and sometimes you want to be in a deck that does a lot of that, and as long as you can rebuild that card advantage, you're not going to be down, and it's not going to feel quite as bad. So I tend to not put too much emphasis on that, although it definitely is something to think about, and it should more, I think, affect how you play your removal spells as opposed to how you if you're going to use them or not. You definitely need to play them, and it's a matter of choosing when to use them. Don't use it when your opponent's Eldrazi is coming at your other buddy, right? Like that's fine, that's great. Yes, this player is gaining in his advantage, and this player is losing, but you are remaining even there, so that's great, that's fine. You want that, and yeah, go ahead.
And presumably, if you could have instant speed exiled that Eldrazi coming at, you can do that later when it comes at you, when and if.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's all about playing at the right moment and all that sort of thing. Again, just stuff that's kind of just general. Good rule of thumb when you're playing in a multiplayer format. It's not like it's 1v1 where when something big comes down, it must be answered. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem. For you, in Commander, you can decide to wait a bit and see how things play out. That can also have a disadvantage. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you wait and they have something that actually trumps you waiting.
Right.
You waited and then they couldn't.
Sort of protection.
Exactly. You waited until they. Oh, now it's coming at me? Okay, great. Now I'll swords it. And it's oh, no, I've got a counterspell now, and I didn't have one before. So sometimes you need to, look at that. Look at the deck they're playing. It's a lot. It's so much. It's such a big scope. But anyways, we're going to talk about the cards that we like to play based on those, general feelings and philosophies in Commander for each card and stuff.
We'll do it in Wooburg order, and then we'll break down some guilds and some shards and the wedges. And interestingly enough, there's far less in the multicolor stuff, and we'll get to that when we get there.
Way less.
But let's start with white.
Okay,
W.
Let's start with white, and let's start with something I said we wouldn't do, which is just tell you about all the best cards, anyways, because you already know about them. But we would be remiss if we did not mention Swords to Plowshares. That's the other thing. All of these cards are going to be budget. None of these cards are going to be over $5, and in fact, I don't think very many of them are over $4, if that at all. I think
Yeah,
we were
a lot of them are like $1 or less.
Yeah, I really did try to keep things about like under $2 for sure. I have maybe 3 or 4 cards that are over that, but really, these things now you can find for about $2 or less. Swords of Plowshares is one of them, recently reprinted again, but it still holds that $2 value. But it's just such a good card. We had to mention it. It's 1 mana, exile, target creature's controller gains life equals power. This card is played in Vintage. It's very, very good. It's 1-for-1 removal, but it only costs 1, and it basically gets rid of anything that you can target, regardless of it being indestructible or anything like that. So, Swords of Plowshares.
It's exile. It's 1 mana. It's instant. That's perfect. That's an A+ right there.
It's an A+. Another card. This one's a weird one. So we went from being like top tier, everyone knows about it, amazing card, to very strange, slow, kind of expensive, but interesting and good in the right deck. It's called Hand of Justice. It's a 6 mana creature that says tap and then tap 3 untapped white creature. Sorry, tap 3 untapped white creatures you control, destroy target creature. So it's actually 4 things to tap, but this is like kind of interesting in a token deck. This can just end a turn. You can just start mowing things down. This really does illustrate the 2 like ends of removal when it comes to Commander. This can be very good in Commander. Can also be, but it's obviously not as good as Swords of Plowshares. So it all depends, right?
Yeah, right. It depends on your criteria too, because this is repeatable, right? If they don't deal with this guy, you're gonna do one every turn.
Exactly. And it is like aside from the setup cost of having 3 untapped white creatures, it just destroys anything. There's no extra stuff you have to do there. Another one is Declaration in Stone. This one's recent and a bit more pricey. It's about $3. Declaration Stone's 1 and a white sorcery. Exile target creature and all other creatures its controllers control with the same name as that creature. That player investigates for each non-token creature exiled this way. So luckily in Commander, they will only ever likely, depending on if it's like a clone deck or something, investigate the one time if you're targeting a non-token thing. Otherwise, you can get a lot of tokens for 1 and a white with this card. This is an example of a sorcery speed removal where it's worth it, right?
Token decks are out there.
Oh yeah, they're very much out there. You coming across? Is it Tana?
Yeah,
Tana decks are starting to sprout up. We made one on a Brew and Brawl.
Sprout.
Yeah, exactly. So Declaration Stone deals with those tokens in a very efficient manner. Like in a pinch, you can also exile your own thing to be able to get a clue token. Although I don't think you'd really want to do that. A similar card is Crib Swap, in that it will exile a creature and then give the person something in return. White does a lot of this. White will a lot of times destroy or exile something and then like leave a small creature there. In Commander, very much worth it always. Crib Swap, for example, I think is like next to obviously like Swords and Path and all that sort of stuff. Crib Swap's 2 and a white for a tribal instant. It's a shapeshifter instant card, and it has Changeling, so this card is every creature type at all times, which is funny. Exile target creature, its controller puts a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling onto the battlefield. So they also get one creature that's everything. So in like rare occasions, you might actually kind of help like a tribal deck or something like that, but it's a pretty small price to pay, especially if you're exiling one of their big important tribal creatures. There's like a really weird there's combos with this card in that like because it's in your graveyard as every creature type. Some cards are like bring like I think like Dakon, is that the card's name? Where it's like bring a night creature.
Yeah.
Bring a night card back to your hand like at the beginning of every end step or something like that. So they just constantly recur Crib Swap. That's a really rare like corner example, but Crib Swap is a really great card. So that's just some examples of some pointed spot removal for white. Some
for
good
creatures.
Ones for creatures, yeah. And now we have one for artifacts and enchantments. This is, I think, the best artifact and enchantment removal card, I think. Maybe Crows and Grip gives it a run for its money, but Return to Dust is 2 and 2 white for an instant. It says exile target artifact or enchantment. If you cast a spell during your main phase, you may exile up to one other target artifact or enchantment.
Yeah.
Yeah, modal cards, right? You want them. I've hardly ever seen this cast at instant speed. I've only really ever seen it during a main phase. But, of course, the fact that the option is there is nice, and once in a while you might need to do that. So this is this is a ubiquitous card. Everyone puts this in every white deck. We just had to point out that it's the best, and it's a budget card.
Yeah, it is getting up there, though. It's almost $3.
Yeah, exactly, because people know how good it is. Next, we have mass removal. We're looking at mass removal now. So there's a couple. Obviously, white is like the color for mass removal. It has the most mass removal cards. It has like the cheapest. Has the widest array of how you do it. So I just want to point out.
Most.
Yeah, right? Like it has like enchantments that sacrifice and do it. It has like big sorceries. It has instants. It's crazy. So I just wanted to highlight some of the ones that I really like, both for their efficiency and what they do. So Fumigate is one that was recently printed. It's great. It's 5 mana. It's 3 and 2 white. Destroy all creatures and you gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. Like, great. You know, you don't want to plot down the money for a Wrath of God or a Day of Judgment, which is the 4 mana Wraths. Look at these 5 mana Wraths because they're printing these now in sets and they're not going up in price very much, but they're still excellent in Commander. So Fumigate's one of them. Another one is End Hostilities, recently printed, same thing. 3 and 2 white, destroy all creatures and all permanents attached to those creatures. So this will often get
huge bonus.
Yeah, it'll often get like Swiftfoot Boots, Lightning Greaves, other awesome equipment attached to your opponent's creatures. And occasionally you'll get your own Swiftfoot Boots or Lightning Greaves.
Yep.
But you know what?
Which is why you run a sack outlet.
Exactly. So I mean that is a small price to pay though when you have a real nice board wipe about to happen. My cat wants to be let out of this room. There you go. Okay. Okay. End Hostilities is great. We also have Fell the Mighty. This is a weird one that I don't see really played that much, but I think this card is great. Fell the Mighty is 4 and a white, so it's a 5 mana board white, but it's not a double white. And that's because there's a bit of a stipulation. It's destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. So this, first of all, this is like hardly ever not just a board wipe. Basically, because you always target the thing with the lowest power, and then it'll destroy basically everything, other than obviously that initial creature.
Right.
If you run this in token decks, this is often a one-sided board wipe. You target your 1/1s, and then every other creature goes except your army of 1/1s, and then hopefully maybe you can pump them up after that and then get in, right? Fell the Mighty shines in a token deck, but I still think is very good in a lot of other decks. I have also, this is the other thing, it's destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. So it is one of the only board wipes that can be countered by hexproofing something if you were trying to target your opponent's creatures. Just always target your own creatures, basically, just to avoid that. Also, though, in saying that is one of the strengths of the card is that you can go, okay, I want to actually kill everything, and they have a 0 something for some reason, right? Like there's a 0 power creature on the board. That's not uncommon in Commander. There's a couple utility creatures that are worth running.
A couple of walls, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So Fell the Mighty, it'll work with that too. I like this card a lot. I don't think it's like the best board wipe or anything, but I think it's fun and good. White destroys creatures very well, but another thing it does is it exiles all creatures very well. Descend upon the Sinful is 4 and 2 white for sorcery that says exile all creatures, and then if you have Delirium, you put a 4/4 white angel out instead, or in as well. Sorry, not instead. Awesome card.
So even if we don't get that angel token, it's worth the upgrade to have everything exiled for the extra mana.
And how many times?
I would.
Go ahead.
I would play it for the extra mana if all it said was exile all creatures.
Of course, there's a card. Like Judgment, something, not Day of Judgment. It's something, Final Judgment. Anyways, that does the same thing. It's a bit pricier though. How many times have you had a board state where you're like, oh, okay, well, unless we have mass exile, we're all dead here.
Right, just a bunch of indestructible tokens or something, right? Or who knows?
And the way around that, of course, is to have that mass exile and descend upon the sinful is one of them. Another way around that, Hallowed Burial, 3 and 2 white for sorcery. This is again one of the best board wipes, and because of what it does, put all creatures on the bottom of their owner's libraries. You might be like, well, this doesn't even kill anything; it just puts it in their libraries. They could just draw it all again. Yes, but that is a big reset, and it gets around all sorts of things like indestructibility and things like that. It also, graveyard decks hate this card, right? You don't want, if you're running a graveyard deck, you're fine with things getting killed usually. You're fine with board wipes. Hallowed Burial is one you do not want to see. So if you yourself are a graveyard deck and you want to run Hallowed Burial, make sure you have, again, plenty of sack outlets.
And this is where the discussion gets interesting about, like, where's your bar for your removal, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Like, I feel like I may never run an End Hostilities again because I think Hallowed Burial will always be better than it.
And it's 50 cents. Like, it's the same price. Like, yeah, it's interesting.
Or like a Fumigate. Like, I don't care about a few life. I'd rather make sure that all those graveyard decks out there do not have access to their creatures in the graveyard anymore.
But of course,
that's superior.
Of course, there are decks where you're happy with the board wipe yourself, so you're like, oh yeah, I want them in the graveyard, so I'll take that at the cost of putting things in other people's graveyards. It's all very deck dependent, I think.
But I still feel though that like every deck should have a sack outlet, so then you don't need to worry about it. You just sack your cards to your own graveyard, and then Hallowed Burial will work on everyone else. And of course, if your opponents have sack outlets as well, as they probably should, this becomes a normal Day of Judgment, which is a fair,
fine.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, there's upsides and downsides to all of these, essentially.
Oh man, this is why it's so deep. We could go on, like, we could tell you why every card is better than every other card and what decks it works in. Man, there's no limit.
There is, yeah, exactly. There's no limit. There's so many things to talk about. So many, whatever. Anyways, I won't get too into it, but I do just want to reiterate that when you're building decks, when you're building commander decks, and you're talking about mass removal, and pointed removal, like, there's so many options that are available for under $1.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it used to be that there weren't that many good ones, actually. And I remember even when we first started this podcast, it was like there was only a handful of these that were budget. But the reprints we've been getting, like Hallowed Burial was reprinted in Conspiracy 2. We're getting reprints of the new Commander sets all the time. So these cards are now budget, right? And they probably will go back out of budget in a few years, but for now we have them. So just be aware of that. Like, you don't have to break your bank to, and like Wrath of God's great, but like, I don't know. I just don't think it's worth it considering how many excellent mass removal spells are available for 1 mana more. And then they have all these other upsides,
Yeah. There's no way. Like, we are not such a tempo-driven format that one turn later makes a difference.
Exactly. How many mass removal spells do you like to include in your average deck, would you say?
Yeah, I don't have a solid number, but I probably put 2 or 3.
And a lot of people would say that's not nearly enough.
Yeah, I know. The way I brew, I kind of do 2 or 3. Here's how. Okay, this may be controversial, but I kind of feel like if we need to wrath too many times in a game, like if we don't wrath, this guy wins. Okay, then he wins.
I know.
If one of my opponents has a wrath, they'll play that wrath as well. And if none of us have the wrath, good on you, player A. You won the game. Yeah. Let's shuffle up and play again.
Yes, I have a similar philosophy, and again, I'm with you. I think this is a bit controversial and not really how most of the Commander world looks at this. Although, I don't know, and I don't know if it's better because it's very meta dependent and all this type of stuff, right? But I'm with you. I run a few more. I'll probably run like 5 if I can. But sometimes I just get too like into the synergy of whatever the deck's doing, and I'm like, well, I've only got 2 board wipes in this deck. Oh well, you know what I mean?
I guess I look at how fragile it is and how long it is and how slow it is and how what the velocity of the deck gets to. Like if I have a couple decks that like they take a long time to get rolling, but once they do, they're awesome. So I'll run more wraths in those to buy me that time.
I also run less wraths because I try to build my decks to be resistant to wraths. So I provide the question as opposed to the answer. I tend to like doing that. That's just in Magic in general. I like that. That being said, I do love control decks too. So I don't know, whatever. But I tend to run like 4 or 5 if I can. But I don't like it when there's too many board wipes. It's not like sure we need them. Sure you need them, and you do need to play them, and they are excellent in the format because if you're behind, which you mostly are, they reset the game, and it's again super important. But you know how many games have you had a Commander where it's like, well, this game's going for an hour and a half because there's been like 4 or 5 board wipes. It's like, at that point, I just wish someone would win. You know, like at that point, I don't care. I just want to start over because now I'm stuck with like I'm top decking, you know, or whatever. You know, like I'm not set up. Maybe someone else is. So Rob losing, yeah, I draw a board wipe. Great, there you go. I stayed of execution for a while. You know what I mean? Like someone's got to win, so I don't mind being like, oh man, I wish I had a board wipe, and then I don't get one, and then someone else wins, and then it's like, okay, new game. Yeah, I think too many board wipes creates like too slow of a game, and but 1 or 2 is fine.
If your meta is chock full of board wipes, then you're disincentivized to build synergistic decks because everything gets torn apart every other turn. Mm-hmm. So like it's I guess it is meta dependent, man. Like it all goes.
It is for sure.
Yeah.
Being here in LA, I've been playing with like some people who I don't know really, and like obviously their metas are different, and playing, you know, with people I do know, and bringing decks from where we are here is very different. And the things that people talk about when they get into these play groups where like board wipes are everywhere. People just have like endless money to spend on things because they just have like crazy like disposable incomes, you know what I mean, which is like awesome. Great, but like that's not everybody. And honestly, I think I've always said this, restrictions make everything better. You have to get creative in restrictions. You have to think of different ways to do things. When everything's available to you and you just always pick the best things, it's boring. And it's like it very, very often is people playing solitaire is what ends up happening. And
right. Do you ever play Ticket to Ride, that train game?
Yes.
If you're good at Ticket to Ride, the optimal strategy ruins the game, where you just draw cards infinitely. You never play a train until you're ready to go out. And then you go train. You just draw because then that way you get more wild cards, I guess. Like you just never stop drawing off the deck until you have like 100 cards in your hand, and then everyone is just racing to finish first, which is such a weird way to play the game. And I don't want my Commander games to feel like dumb Ticket to Ride.
Huge burn on Ticket to Ride here.
Oh man, Ticket to Ride, you roasted.
You burnt. So there's our philosophy. It seems like is very different from say someone like Josh and Jimmy's philosophy, and it's because their meta and the people they play with are very different than the people we play with, and the styles are different. And like they've got to deal with Craig Blanchett in their group, who just constantly running infect decks. Like, and I don't know if you guys have heard Josh talk lately about you know the decks he's building and things like that. But he's talking about running so many 1-drops and 2-drops, and it's like, well, of course you do, because you got a guy who's coming at you with a 5/5 infect on like turn 3. It's like that's not the typical experience in Commander, right?
No.
Those guys love it though, and that's great, and like great for them. And they've got to run these, like they've got to be constantly resetting the board because you got people like that trying to kill you with every turn, right? Craig's always attacking. You know, whenever I hear anyone who's played with Craig, I've met Craig once or twice actually. I don't think I've actually. Oh, and I did. I played a game with him. He played a Carador deck. It wasn't quite as aggressive as I think his normal decks are, but like I understand that, and it would warp your meta if you got this person doing this. So it is very meta dependent. But I do think if we all shied towards just playing with restrictions, I think everyone would have a more fun time. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's tough to say.
So this is why the topic is so deep. We just did white cards.
Yeah, I know.
and we're already here. Like we gotta like.
You're right.
What?
So, but that's a lot of the philosophy talk out of the way, right?
Sure.
I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
Okay, change gears. Go to
yeah,
blue.
we'll change gears. Okay, Terminus does the same. Puts things on bottom of those lines. Same thing. Let's go to blue.
Okay, blue. Blue is not great at spot removal of things. Blue is amazing at bouncing things back to hands, but unfortunately, like I said, if this is not a tempo format, so that doesn't do us very well, right? It buys us time, right? Cyclonic Rift being the classic example, it returns everything, but if you haven't won the game, everyone's board is back to the way it was in a turn and a half anyway. So it's not a huge, it's just a delay. But there's a few cards that do get rid of things. Let's talk about Rapid Hybridization or Pongify. I'll read Rapid Hybridization. It's a single blue instant that destroys target creature. There's only 2 cards that do that in this way, and it gives the creature that you destroyed a 3/3 green something, either a frog, lizard.
The player a 3/3.
Yeah, the player. Yeah. So you trade up. You give them a 3/3 token for their awesome creature. Mm-hmm. Good deal. And then blue also has access to Reality Shift, which was a cool Fate Reforged one. It's an instant that exiles target creature. Blue is not have a good time exiling creatures. This is a rare card for that. Its controller manifests the top card of his or her library. So instead of giving them a 3/3 token, you give them a 2/2 manifest, which could be better than a token, but it also could be worse. So you take the good with the bad in that one.
You take the good, you take the bad, you exile it from their hand. The fact's alive.
Reality Shift.
This is kind of like the blue Chaos Warp, right?
Yeah.
Except
kinda.
It only does creatures, but most times you'll be happy to trade your. You'll be happy to like exile their Avacyn and give them a random card, which is not necessarily going to be something they can flip, right? If they get a land or an instant or sorcery, enchantment, anything, they can't flip it. So
yeah, I mean you'll never know, but it's the possibility, the likelihood that you could probably figure it out based on how they're playing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also blue has an interesting creature. It costs you a whopping 7 mana. Phyrexian Ingester, 6 and a blue and it's got imprint. So when it enters the battlefield, you exile a target non-token creature. Here's another way to exile a creature. Phyrexian Ingester gets +X/+Y, where X is the creature's power and Y is the toughness. So it starts as a 3/3, and whatever it ingests, it just becomes the equivalent size bigger.
Yeah.
It costs a lot, but it's a good ability to have. And then one thing that blue can do is, right, as we said, putting things back in hands, right? The cheapest way to do it, and it affects everybody, is evacuation. 3 blue, return all creatures to their owner's hands at instant speed, right? You'll do this at the end of the last player's turn and then take advantage. And if you're clever with it, Washout, 3 and a blue, is a sorcery, but it returns all permanents of the color of your choice to their owner's hands. So, if you're running a mono blue deck or maybe just a 2-color deck, this is going to be excellent in your deck because you can probably make that largely one-sided, if not entirely one-sided. And then this guy's pretty good, right? Ixodron, 3 blue. He's an illusion creature. He's star, but when he enters the battlefield, turn all other non-token creatures face down. This is the best. This is the closest to a board wipe that blue has, because although their creatures are still around, they're just 2/2, and like I bet you very few of them were morphs or manifests, so they're not going to be able to turn back up.
Yeah, that's the thing to remember with Ixodron. It's not like you've now manifested those creatures. Those creatures are not. You cannot flip them back.
Unless they have morph on them,
or have, like you said, or have been manifested, right?
Or megamorph.
Yeah. So they need that ability to flip or have been manifested by something else. So basically, what you're saying, they just turns all their creatures into 2/2 colorless things.
Yeah, right. So Ixodron, right? Less than, but just over a gumball. Excellent card.
Awesome card, and like there's like some magic like brain teasers of like, here's the board state. Like, how do you what cards could you play to get out of this? And the answer is always Ixodron, because it just like turns everything into nothing. You know what I mean? So
right. So you'll notice blue is pretty thin in the removal section. That's because of blue's color identity. It wants to counter the spells before they even hit the battlefield. And we're not going to go into counter spells. That will be another episode talking about counter spells, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is important though to mention that that is the way blue removes. Like if we were going very deep, I mean we're going pretty deep here, but if we were going that extra level deep, like we would have to talk about counter spells, right? Like it's
sure because blue wants to bounce, which is great if you're going to counter it when it tries to come back.
Exactly. That is blue's removal. That is how you avoid things in blue is countering. But we're talking about strictly on board removal here.
Okay, moving on. Black. Black. So black is amazing at removing creatures, and that's about it. It's not very good at enchantments or artifacts. Let's use murder as our baseline, right? Murder is 1 black for an instant, destroy target creature. Okay, it's destroy. There's no restriction on what you hit, and it's instant speed, and it costs 3. So there's a couple of cards. It's like super cheap. It's less than a gumball, right? You can always run a murder. I'm happy to run a murder. If you want to get cheaper, it's going to come with a drawback, right? So for a single black, there's an instant called Vendetta. It's also instant, and you get to destroy target non-black creature. So not everything. It can't be regenerated, and you lose life equal to that creature's toughness. So you lose out. You're going to lose life, and you can't hit everything. Is that a fair trade for 2 mana? I don't think so.
For a lot of people, I just wanted to say before we get real going in here, a lot of people will say, like, murder's not good enough, right?
Yeah, why is that?
And I think it's because it's 3 mana, and it only destroys, and there's no, like, doesn't exile, doesn't, like, people can regenerate things. I mean, I know that that's not super common, really, but, like, it does happen.
Yeah.
Hex. Obviously, all these things don't get around hexproof, shroud,
right.
things like that.
No spot removal does.
Exactly. So like it's tough. I think and I guess people just say, well, there's better versions of things, recurable and all that sort of stuff. That murder's not like murder. I agree with you as the baseline, but it's up to you to decide like what you'd rather have. Like some people would say Vendetta is better because it's only 1 black. Yeah, it doesn't hit black creatures, and you lose a bit of life. But completely subjective, right? Like, but I think murder is a fair baseline. And also, I just wanted to also add, I stop running things that don't kill black creatures that are in black.
Oh yeah,
because
it's just too risky. What if you're playing a mono black deck?
Too many times I'm in a black deck, and I need to kill something that's black, and I just can't do it. Like So I stopped doing it. I stopped running those things.
Yeah, I mean, all spot removal will be blanked if it's got hexproof or shroud, but you don't want your card to be blanked just because the other person's running a color.
Exactly. The one exception to that for me is Shriekmaw.
Sure.
In decks that like abuse it because it's just too good once they abuse it.
Because it's abused, right?
Exactly,
and so let's talk about Murderous Cut, right? Murderous Cut is 4 and a black, an instant. Destroy target creature. That's way more than murder, but it has delve, so you could get away with just paying black, right? Again, you still want stuff in your graveyard. You can't do this early game, and if your meta is all about emptying those graveyards, you may never get to pay cheaper for Murderous Cut, right? So again, all that stuff. So let's take a second and talk about some cards that cost a little. Oh yeah, we're skipping those. Okay, cool. We're talking about. Move on to some mass removal that black can do. Not as cheap as white, but the most basic destroy all creatures is Life's Finale for black. So basically just destroy all creatures. Then search target opponent's library for up to 3 creature cards and put them into his or her graveyard. You don't have to actually find anything. So it's nice to just look at the other person's deck and see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. I actually find lately that I just don't put things in people's graveyards with this.
I almost unless I want to steal from their graveyard.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think that's the exception is if you're in the reanimator deck that grabs from other people's graveyards, you're often in. It's better to turn that down because, like I've seen it where people are like, I'll take away these awesome creatures from your deck. It's like, well, actually putting them in my graveyard, no matter what I'm in, is usually making them more accessible to me, right?
Right, or someone else who's eyeballing graveyards too.
Exactly, or anyone else. Exactly. Like I could be running my green-red deck that has nothing to do with graveyards, but yeah, someone else can get them now. So
yeah. But I do think it's worth a little peek. You get to look through their deck and just see what's up. And then one more, I think it can be good. You're going to want a sack outlet. As I said before, you always want sack outlets. Deadly Tempest. 4 black for a sorcery. Same price. Destroy all creatures. Same effect. Each player loses life equal to the number of creatures he or she controlled that were destroyed this way. You know what? You can get some incidental kills this way against a token player who's caught without a sack outlet, or maybe just a bunch of extra damage. That's a bonus I'm willing to go for.
I think this card's great. I love it. Especially how easy it is to gain life in black. White-black especially. The Deadly Tempest is an awesome card. I love this card. I think it's very underrated. People who generally run other things over this, but Deadly Tempest is great.
Yeah.
Are we talking about red?
Let's go to red.
Okay, red. Okay, it's interesting.
Burn.
Right? Red is one of the best removal colors in like every other form of Magic, aside from Commander.
Yes.
Right? Red is arguably the best when it comes to limited and standard and all the other older formats, because Lightning Bolt is one of the best cards ever printed. But that card is not good in Commander. It's arguably playable, even in decks that really like take advantage of it. But certainly in your average deck, it's not great. So we got to look a little deeper. And in order to do that, we got to turn to cards like Burn Away. This is actually this is a Scott Butler favorite. Patron Scott Butler and friend of ours, and he's
former co-host, former guest
before. Well, Butler is the one who pointed me towards Burnaway, and I agree with him in that this card is actually playable in Commander. It's 4 and a red, so it's 5. It's not cheap, but it is an instant, and it says Burnaway deals 6 damage to target creature. When that creature dies this turn, exile all cards from its controller's graveyard. So that's the little bonus you're getting. That's the key part of the card, actually, because you can find this card in red a lot of different ways to deal 5 or 6 damage to something, and then it just dies. But it's the exile in the graveyard that actually makes this work, and that's kind of the work you need to do in red to make a card like this playable. And even then, a lot of people would probably tell you this card isn't playable for budget decks, and I do think in general this card is decent. Okay, and then obviously we've got the classic all-time staple of Chaos Warp, which is 2 and a red. It's an instant. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into his or her library, then reveals the top card of his or her library if it's a permanent card, puts it onto the battlefield. So I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Reality Shift, this is the classic example. This is the only way a mono-red deck can really deal with enchantments.
Yeah.
Aside from like turning them into an artifact with a colorless card and then destroying an artifact or something. So this is why this card is like run a lot in those decks. I don't think this card is that good if you're running like red green or red white or at all. You know what I mean? Like I don't think Chaos Warp is that good. Personally.
If you have the support of another color that can handle permanents, then go ahead, run that. Like if you're running black-white, you can handle any permanent with anything, so don't worry about it.
Exactly, and with the tuck rule change, this got a lot worse, considering you can't tuck someone's commander with it, which I think is the real reason it was a pricey card and very highly played. But that being said, it is still pretty good. It's still good. It does handle just about anything, as long as you can target it. You might trade it up for something even better. I think that's pretty rare. Usually they'll flip a land and they'll get that. And sometimes not a permanent, and then you're laughing. So Chaos Warp is still definitely good stuff, definitely worth running. I just find when I'm in green or white also, I don't like it nearly as much.
No.
Okay, this is one I actually want to talk about too. This is a weird one that I don't think I've ever seen anyone play, but maybe. Anyways, it's called Into the Maw of Hell. It's 4 and 2 red. It's a sorcery. It says destroy target land, and then Into the Maw of Hell deals 13 damage to target creature. Again, this is what we got to do to make a red burnout creature card good. It has to deal 13 damage because then it can handle just about everything. At the highest end of Eldrazi's being and indestructible cards obviously being the exception. But destroying a target land is a nice thing. It actually does come up more than you'd think. It doesn't have to be of the same controller. The creature can belong to Sean. The land can belong to Butler. It's great. So 6 mana, is it a little too much to pay? Maybe. Maybe it is. In fact, it probably is.
I think it is.
In fact, it probably is. But it's just like, oh, interesting. If you're running mono red, maybe it's something you'd think about. As far as mass removal goes, red is not the worst color for it, but like not the best. Blasphemous Act is one we all know about. It's
my favorite.
Great card because of its efficiency, right? Which is not something we generally tend to like really value in Commander, but it's always good if you can get it. It's 8 and a red, so it's 9. It looks like, but Blasphemous Act costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield, and what it does is it deals 13 damage to each creature. So for Into the Maw of Hell, it costs 6, which is like that's not very good. Blasphemous Act often costs you like 1 or 2, and it often again gets just about everything. The notable exceptions being things that have protection from red or things that have higher toughness than 13. Protection from red is pretty scarce, so you're pretty good. This is the best red board wipe, I think, for sure. Another one quickly. There's a lot of X, deal damage to everything type stuff. That's all fine and good. Not super great because you do need to kind of spend your entire turn doing it usually. Volcanic Vision is an interesting one. 5 and 2 red. Return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Volcanic Vision deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to each creature your opponents control, and then you exile this card. So again, it's like probably going to get everything for like 5 or 6 if you get a big instant or sorcery card. So it's like something to think about. It's cards like Chandra's Ignition, which are kind of similar to this, which will hit everything for like the power that a card on the battlefield is. So there's a lot of stipulations when it comes to red. Except for when you're talking about Jokel Hops. 4, 2 red for a sorcery that's destroy all artifacts, creatures, and lands. They can't be regenerated. It's worth mentioning because it's one of the only like hard red board wipes. But like, just don't run Jokel Hops because it also destroys all lands. And unless you're gonna win that turn or the next turn, it's just gonna ruin the game. So
it shows up in a lot of Narset decks because you're gonna keep casting spells without lands while no one else is.
Exactly, and that's why Narset is largely viewed as the best or most broken commander. It's because of cards like Jokel Hops. But I had to mention it.
Yep.
So overall, red like not great, but that's what you can do with it, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to green. Green is amazing at dealing with artifacts and enchantments, not so good at dealing with creatures.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a famous card that's way out of budget. It's Song of the Dryads that turns a creature into a forest. That Mark Rosewater has publicly stated that he disagrees with. He thinks that broke the green color pie and it should not be in the format. But artifacts and enchantments, no problem. Green's got your back. Let's talk about Krosan Grip. This is probably the number one artifact or enchantment removal that green has access to because of Split Second. So it's 2 and a green for Split Second. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. It's only destroy. It's not exile, and it is instant, which is great. But it's got Split Second, so no one can do anything in response. No one can activate the artifact or enchantment. No one can sack anything. No one can cast a counter spell. You're getting your man with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
nothing to say about this other than that it's the best.
Yeah, right. And then Lignify, similarly, right? It enchants a creature for 1 and a green. Enchanted creature loses all abilities and is a tree folk with base power and toughness 0/4. That seems like a white ability to me, right? Like they probably should have been white.
Yeah, it's definitely like, yeah, it's just green shouldn't have these abilities because this is first of all like enchantments in green, no, but then and also like creature basically creature removal.
Yeah, and it's almost better than creature removal in the sense that the creatures doesn't change zones. So if it's your commander, they don't go back to the command zone. Nothing goes to your graveyard, so you can't reanimate it. Like it's a pretty powerful removal spell in a color that should not be able to do this. But we'll take it. This is about a gumball, so no problem. Mm-hmm. And then so like if you want to do some mass removal in green as well, for enchantments, right? Back to Nature is an instant for 1 and a green to destroy all enchantments. Right, and if you just keep your build without a lot of enchantments, this is going to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
But if you do have a lot of enchantments, Oh, yeah, I want to talk about spring cleaning. This is just a fun one I discovered that I think is really neat. Spring cleaning has clash, so I mean you would have to you can't assume you're going to run. You can't assume you're going to win the clash, so you have to just kind of be like, do I want this for its normal effect? And it's an instant speed 2 mana spell that destroys target enchantment. It's not amazing, but if you win the clash, you destroy all enchantments your opponents control. So it's an entirely one-sided enchantment wipe, which I think, yeah, like I guess again, it all comes down to like, where is that bar for you? Is it worth running a card that at instant speed destroys an enchantment alone? I mean, is your meta chock full of enchantments? Maybe it is, and then you might get the bonus, right? So like it's so complicated and deep. Anyway, and then lastly, I want to talk about Wave of Vitriol. Wave of Vitriol is fantastic. It's 5 green, so it's pricey. It is only a gumball in real life price though. Each player sacrifices all artifacts, enchantments, and non-basic lands he or she controls. Whoa, I forgot about that non-basic part.
Yeah.
Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then each player who searched his or library shuffles. So, yeah, they're going to get their lands back in the form of basics, but all the enchantments and artifacts have to be sacrificed. So they're not exiled, but they can't be indestructible. Like there's no way you can stop a sacrifice.
We had a board state going on in the last Commander game I played where if I this card would have been the way out of it. It was it was a like artifact deck that everything was indestructible and hexproof. It was a Padim deck.
Yeah, Padim plus yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh, and Mycosynth Lattice. So like, actually, everyone would have had to sacrifice everything. now that I think about it, that's the thing I forgot about. But at any rate, it was take that out of the equation, and this is a good way around stuff like that. Yeah, and I've seen this card cast only a handful of times, but every time it gets rid of all the powerful enchantments and artifacts, obviously, and it will almost always really screw over one player. Who like, oh man, I only have like 4 basics in this deck, like screws the greedy players.
Yeah, they go down a large number of lands.
Speaking of which, that happened to me when I played Modern Masters last night. I ran a 5-color deck and ran into a guy who got Blood Moon out on turn 3 or whatever it is. Both games.
Ouch.
Just got really crushed there. Anyways, moving forward.
Would you consider Blood Moon removal?
Not really, I guess, but only against like really greedy 5-color decks, probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sort of removal though, pseudo, but not really. No, it doesn't remove anything. It just kind of changes. I don't know. Anyways, not really worth talking about. It's a very expensive card.
Sure.
So is that it for green?
That's it for green.
Okay, so now we go to colorless. So we go to cards that can actually appear in any deck because they are colorless. Spot removal, mass removal. Not as I think they've done a good job here in that it's not as easy to come by in colorless because then it could just go in any commander deck.
Right.
So they've done a good job of in the new commander products and stuff keeping it keeping that level of stuff being printed pretty low. So we get stuff instead like Predator Flagship was reprinted in a commander set. It's a 5-mana legendary artifact that says pay 2 generic and target creature gains flying until end of turn. Okay, that's good. That's cool. But then it says pay 5 and tap it, destroy target creature with flying. I think this is actually I've started to run this in a deck. I think I have this my Niv Mizzet deck or something. Just because I wanted to see, you know what I mean? I just want to see if this card's any good.
I love that strategy.
Yeah, right? And I've kept it in there long enough now that I've had it in a few games, and I really like this card. I think it's very good because it can give your creatures evasion for when you want to swing in and get the last blow or whatever, or get a thing where you draw a card or whatever. Plus, it can, for 7 mana, in case you missed the combination of these 2 abilities, you pay 2, give something flying, then you pay 5 and tap this, and you kill any creature, essentially. Or if something already has flying, guess what? You can just kill it for 5. Obviously, that's a lot of mana to pay, but if we're talking about colorless sources, you are generally going to have to pay quite a bit of mana to kill things. Like 6 is like 5 and 6 is like the minimum, and usually you have to pay more on top of that.
So and just to keep in mind is like what colors are your deck? If your deck is white red, you don't have a problem dealing with creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So, you probably don't need this for that reason, right? But if you're green blue, maybe you don't deal with creatures removal that well. So this is a good ad for you.
I'm blue red, and as we'll see when we get to the colorless section, blue red does not deal well with creatures. I mean, red, you get the red removal and you get the blue counter spells, but sometimes the creatures are too big and you didn't have a counter spell, right? So like, anyways, Predator Flagship is not bad. Next we have Universal Solvent, which is a way to destroy a permanent, but again, a lot. It costs 1 to cast, but then it costs 7 and tap it, and then you have to sacrifice it. Hefty price, but it's playable in certain decks. Similarly, we have Unstable Obelisk, which is 3 to cast. It's a mana rock, so it taps for colorless, but also 7 and tap it, you can destroy a permanent. And Spine of Ishtar is just straight up 7 to cast. It enters the battlefield, you destroy a permanent, and then when it dies, you return it to your hand. That's not it. Spine of Ishtar is these are good cards in like recurable artifact decks and so on. But it's a big price to pay for those cards. Scar from Existence, again, 7 mana, exile target permanent.
It seems to be the amount, 7.
And Duplicant is a 6 mana 2/4 creature that exiles a creature. So like we're talking 6-7 mana for all these cards. Not cheap, but generally they'll get rid of what you're looking for because it's permanence. As far as mass removal goes, only a couple options. Boom Pile, most recently printed in the new Commander deck. It's 4 generic for an artifact, and you tap it and you have to flip a coin. If you win the flip, you destroy all non-land permanents. Nev's Disc is the classic. It's 4 mana. It enters tapped, and you pay 1 and tap it to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. And then we have Perilous Vault, which is 4, and then you pay 5 to tap it, and it exiles all non-land permanents. So those are really your options. Perilous Vault's even a little bit pricey. It's like $3 or something. So,
oof.
Whew. That was quick going through those. But basically, like, you don't have a lot of options in colorless, surprisingly.
Yeah, because they don't want them to just. Otherwise, you would run those and nothing else, right?
Exactly. But between colorless and the colors that you and the off-color stuff like Lignify and all that, you can generally get enough removal in colors that are not supposed to be good at removal to be fine in Commander. That's one thing we should note.
Let's use this to segue into the multicolor section. Now, the multicolor section, we had it divided between all the guilds and all the shards and everything, but we can probably like skip most of this.
Yes, we can.
Because I think we can sum a lot of the multicolor spells up in the fact that look at what you're trying to do with the spell. Most of the time, there is a monocolor spell that does what you're trying to do better than the dual color spell.
Yeah.
So just run that. For example, we were talking about Crows and Grip. If we're looking at a multicolor enchantment removal that is green and something else, it has to be better than Crows and Grip, or I'm just going to run Crows and Grip.
Yeah.
Like it has to be cheaper, or it has to hit multiple targets, or it has to
repeatable. So like you get like Trigon Predator is like
sure,
but
repeatable is worth
like
it.
That like we didn't include that in this because like Trigon Predator is a creature that then also needs to land and be able to swing in and hit the player, right? Or a player rather. So like that's a lot to have to do. Like we're talking about mostly about like make it happen when it enters the battlefield or when it's cast.
I used to run a Trigon Predator in a deck, and it has never destroyed an artifact or enchantment.
It's tough. It is tough. I think it's still worth running though. I think it's still good. If your deck is about evasion and stuff, I think it's worth running.
Yeah, maybe.
It again though depends, man. All this thing is like everything is with an asterisk. Everything depends, So yeah, like I guess we can sort of look at it like an overall thing. Like Sean said, blue, like, one thing we didn't mention, I wanted to quickly mention without going deep in on the actual cards, but we're not talking a lot about the enchantments that come into play and will, like, for example, exile something, and then like Oblivion Ring, or Journey to Nowhere, that sort of stuff.
Stasis Snare.
Yeah, because and those are definitely forms of removal, and I think a lot of them are actually kind of good, but like Detention Sphere is one we got on the notes here, but like you can also just like, if those get removed, then those things come back. So it's not quite like hard removal like we're talking about, like go to your graveyard or exile it or put it in your, it is a form of removal for sure. We just didn't want to, like, I mean, we'd be here for, again, 15 hours talking about all this stuff otherwise.
Right.
So,
like, yeah, it's like, yeah, you'll know when your deck wants enchantment-based removal.
Exactly. And there are quite a few options out there. Isolation Zone or something, I think is one.
Yep.
There's a lot of them. Chain to the Rocks, right? Like, I mean,
sure.
Here we are.
Go to the corner.
Go to the corner. That's a good one. But yeah, this is
So are there any out of the guilds that you feel are like just extra good that you want to mention?
I think so.
Yeah, there's a couple.
There's definitely a couple that we
like. I want to talk about Decimate in Gruul.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
It is right. So like red and green are good at artifacts and enchantments, and this is just an amazing value for 4 mana. 2 red green, destroy target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, and target land. So you get one of everything. So red and green by themselves are not good at creatures. So this does a creature. And you get also an enchantment and a land and an artifact. Now, you cannot cast this if you do not have valid targets. You will have to target your own stuff otherwise. So that can be a drawback, but in our format, most of the time, this is a 4-for-1.
Yeah, of course, yeah, you need those things to be able to cast it. Otherwise, it is uncastable. But it's often amazing. I wanted to talk about the like Orzhov suite of like exiling
Orzhov
things.
Owns
right?
it.
Orzhov
specifically are just like, oh, you got permanence, no problem.
We got you. It's like they're obviously the best removal colors, white and black. So when you put them together, they become even better, I guess.
Oh my gosh.
Anguish Unmaking, 1 white black for an instant. Exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. Big deal. This is a great spell. Of course. You know what? Utter End is very similar. Sorry, that's not the right.
Cost 1 more, you don't have to lose life.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exile non-land permanent. There's Unmake, which is exile a creature. There's Mortify. There's Angel Despair. There's a lot of good stuff. But then if we're talking about mass removal, it also has one of the best mass exile spells, which is Merciless Eviction. 4 white black sorcery. You choose one. Exile all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers. So this is like. This is an excellent card. This is very good. Arguably one of the best board wipes, I would say, right? Like, you get to choose what it is you want based on the situation. It's perfect. I have cast this and exiled all enchantments before because that's just what you need to do sometimes, right?
I can't wait to take out a Super Friends deck with this card.
Oh, I know. Oh, please tell us if you've ever cast Merciless Eviction for exile all planeswalkers and got more than one planeswalker with it. Because sometimes it is
like
just
more than 2.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, right? But like
one from you, like more than 2 from one player.
It's definitely worth it sometimes to cast it to exile the one planeswalker that is just about to ultimate, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, very interesting. But this card is great. I think, Orzhov is the best at these things. Golgari is pretty good, but I was surprised to find that there's not that many Golgari like removal spells. I thought there would be more.
It's the same problem, right? Like there's like mono black probably does it better. Mono green probably does it better, right?
The exception being, I think, Putrefy, which is like 1 black green. It kills an artifact or a creature, and it can't be regenerated. It's an instant. Great card. And you get like some mass removal in Golgari with something like Gaze at Granite. X black green sorcery. Destroy all non-land permanents with converted mana cost X or less. So you have to pay a lot for it, but like it's a way. But like you said, like black, it's non-land permanent, so it does. There's a bonus there, but like black handles creatures so easily that like whatever, right?
Yeah, like is Gaze of Granite that much better? You're gonna have mono black board wipes that do all creatures, You don't have to pay like more. You're gonna have to pay way more than 6 to get good stuff with this.
Yeah.
And then just like, green can handle the enchantments and artifacts as well with another card. Like, I mean, this does the job of 2 cards, but you have to pay like 10 mana for it. I don't know if that's worth it.
I agree. I think it's a fringe at best, and if you have a deck that's built that can handle it and take advantage of it and keep your big things alive while killing everyone else's small things, that's fine. But in general, like, yeah, there's just better options in the monocolors. Same thing goes for, I mean, Izzet barely has anything. Izzet has like some like an X spell, like Invoke the Firemind. Boros has Boros deals well with enchantments and artifacts for like wear and tear and stuff like that. Simic has like nothing. Simic has Crisis Incubation, which is like what? Which is it's an enchantment based removals. It's basically it's like a pacify effect.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then there's like tricolor spells too, but again, like the only thing you gain out of these occasionally are just flexibility, right?
And it's the charms, right?
Yeah.
Let's mention. Yeah, let's I've got Bant.
Which
Charm
one do you want to
here.
do?
It's not even the best one, but let's talk about Bant.
Bant Charm, sure. So Bant Charm is Bant, so blue, white, green, and one of the modes is destroy target artifact. That's great. Another mode is put target creature on the bottom of its owner's library. Okay, that's creature removal.
It's actually pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other mode is counter target instant spell. So there you go. There's like a
maybe this is like, the best one.
It might be, right? Yeah, it's flexible. You got a lot of options. That's what multicolor cards can do for you. But again, if you're in white and green and blue, like you can do like that. That's why the charms are what they are. Like the green part is the destroy the artifact, the white part is the creature, and the blue part is the counter. So like you have those things in your deck anyway. This is just a convenient way to put it all in one package.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you get from that. Some of them are worth running. Some of them are very fringe and like very situational. That's the trade-off you make, right?
Right. Do you really want all 3 abilities? Do you just want 2 of the 3? Is that worth it? Do you want 1 of the 3? If only you want 1, you probably just want the mono card.
Literally every card we have listed here is a charm, except for like 3 of them.
Right.
So we might as well just quickly mention these ones then. Lava Lanch is a Jund card. That's X, black, red, green, and its Lava Lanch deals X damage to target player and each creature he or she controls. So it's like not mass, but it's like one. It really owes one player.
Just a big middle finger to one player.
Yeah, I think one of the best board wipes is Dune Blast. It's expensive. If it would ever come up on the screen, here it is.
You know what? It's 7, which is 1 more than a lot of our 6 mana ones that we're happy to play. So it's not really that expensive.
True. It's for an Abzan, so white, black, green. Sorcery. Choose up to 1 creature. Destroy the rest. So you pick one of your guys and you kill everything else. Huge. It's very, very good. Whenever you get this, you're just so stoked to see Dune Blast. It's great. And the other one I don't know, barely even worth mentioning is Crackling Doom.
I think Crackling Doom's all right. If you're Mardu, so it's red, white, black, instant. Crackling Doom deals 2 damage to each opponent. That's who cares. But each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures he controls. So that's all right. You're gonna really hurt everyone's board, right, for their biggest creature. Yeah. Which is not nothing.
There is. I will tell you where there is actually nothing. Jeskai. And it seems Naya. I don't know. I didn't look deep into Naya because that was you had the shards. I had the wedges.
Nothing in Naya.
Nothing in Jeskai either. Like actually nothing, which I found to be very strange.
There might have been something in Naya, but I didn't see anything. Like here's what I did. I just searched for those colors and I was like, did anything say destroy target or exile target, or does anything say destroy all or exile all?
That's kind of That's kind of I with these ones I went a little deeper because I just looked at all the cards that were these colors and
because you can
exactly because there's like 13 or 14 of them at most. So that's it. That's removal. We're talking about removal. We talked about the philosophies behind removal, the stuff we like to do, our take on it, sort of the general takes on it, and but it's up to you, right? Like it not only is it up to you because of the deck you're running, like you might run a permission deck and run all counter spells and board wipes and go like very hard control. You might just be green red gruel and not run a single board wipe. Like, I think anything is correct as long as it's what you want to do.
Yeah, man, play with the meta, right? Like, I definitely have found out that playing in my meta, I don't run enough enchantment removal because, enchantments are creeping up. Like, it's a pendulum because our meta doesn't run enchantment removal, so people get away with Mind's Dilation until they win. So then we're like, well, and then step 1 is everyone runs Mind's Dilation, and now step 2 is everyone runs a ton of enchantment hate. So then step 3, which has not happened yet, is people will stop running the enchantments and just blank other people's enchantment hate.
That's right.
Which is why the flexibility becomes a thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you want those modal cards, so they can run more than one option, right? They're not going to be dead necessarily, right? The guild charms are worth mentioning just in that, like, not a lot of them do hard removal. I think like a Azorius charm might put something on the top of its owner's library, but just in a lot of them do removal in other ways. Like Rakdos charm can exile an entire graveyard, which is like a sort of, it's like a form of removal, especially if you're using that as a resource, But modal cards usually have some form of removal on them, and some of them are worth looking at. Yeah.
Wow. So I guess my takeaway after talking about removal is I'm going to look at the colors that my deck is, and I'm going to approach each thing. What do I want to do for a creature removal? And I'm going to lean on the color that does that the best and pick my favorite monocolor cards most likely for that area.
Yeah.
Right? When it comes to enchantment and artifact removal, if I've got green in my deck, I'm going to look towards green to handle that role. And then I'm just going to rank them how I like. And if I don't have good ones, then I'll start to look towards colorless or maybe multicolor.
I think my takeaway from all this is that you certainly don't need to break the bank when it comes to removal.
Not at all.
You really don't. And sometimes, so we've been doing this budget podcast now for 88 episodes. And there have been times where it's like, wow, I wish that this deck I was building, I wish I could have $100 more because it would be way more fun or effective or whatever, right? But this is certainly not the case when it comes to just looking at removal in general. Are there very good options at a higher cost? Of course there are. Path to Exile. We mentioned Song of the Dryads, right? These are
most notably reprinted Damnation.
Of course. Wrath of God, even a good card, of course. But guess what? In this format, it's not worth it at all. And in fact, I would rather be running those other cards, even in general, I think, for the most part. So you definitely don't need to break the bank. You can roll with the big boys when it comes to removal, always. And just look at your meta, look at your decks. What do they want? What do you want? As long as you're able to pull off what your deck wants to do and have a good time doing it, you're fine.
There you go.
Great.
We did it.
We did it. And actually, you know what? We didn't go. For a while there, it looked like we were going to go very long.
Oh yeah, it did. But so this is number 2 of our Talkin Bouts, right? We already did Talkin Bout Graveyard. So please let us know how you like these Talkin Bout episodes, right? And if you have any other ideas, you're like, ooh, I would love it if you guys talking about something else, then drop us a line. We're not going to do another one in the immediate future, but we'll pop one in from now and then.
Of course.
But as usual, stay tuned for a Commander interview. All kinds of information coming up on how to reach us and contact us.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Talkin Bout. Now, fans of the show know that we always talk about something, and I have with me one of the hosts of the Commander's Brew podcast, Andy Hall. You guys just did an episode where you're talking about. That's fascinating. How was that?
It was very good. Yeah, we picked removal, so we were talking about removal. It's kind of like a sub-theme of the episodes we do on the show.
Oh, wow. Well, on our show, Talking About, everything. We just talk about things. And I don't know what you're talking about, but I know you're from Canada, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you like nostalgic television shows.
I do. Yeah, of course. I love.
All right.
TV,
So, like, do you want to talk about a show you like, an old Canadian show?
Yeah, sure.
So before we begin, we're gonna play our theme music, and this is Talkin Bout.
Oh, okay. Oh, there it is.
Great. Talkin Bout. What do you want to talk about?
Just off the top of my head, I think like The Raccoons was a really good show. Danger Bay was a really fun one.
Okay, those are all right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bumper Stumpers was a really fun.
Oh, game shows. I like game shows. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of talk shows I like too. John O'Vision.
We like
was really
talking.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a really fun a game show, where like you got like a thing like toasters, and then you had to like say as many things like that related to toasters as you could, for example, in like 90 seconds or 60 seconds or whatever. It's called Talk About.
That sounds fun.
Yeah,
let's do that segment. Hit the theme.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, this is Talkin Bout. Talk about. Talk to me about that show. What did you like about that show?
I like the host. I think his name was Ray.
I don't remember.
No, I don't remember either. It is a really good game show though, and a very fun board game. I had the home game version of it. Of Talk About.
What's a topic you remember from it?
Oh, you know what? There's so many. One was like toys was really fun. I remember doing toys.
We like toys.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I just got to talk about, like, you just talk about toys. You'd be like, okay, He-Man, like Masters of the Universe, like Hot Wheels cars, Tonka trucks, toy like boats, like, you know what I mean? We do like, you could say anything you wanted, and whether or not it showed up in the show or whatever.
Okay, let's do it. Hit the theme. Okay, we're talking about Tonka boats.
Sorry, what?
We're going real deep here. We're going down the rabbit hole. What kind of Tonka boats you like? What, they got names, those Tonka boats?
I mean, I don't know. I never gave them names.
How about one's called Taco Boat?
Okay.
Hit the theme.
Okay. Well, listen. Actually, okay, but
talk about Tonka boats, Taco Boat. How do we go deeper?
I don't know. Sorry, what are we on right now? What are we actually talking about?
We're talking about boats made of tacos, and I bet you one of those boats made of tacos has a name. What do you think that name is? How about it's going to sound like Talk About? Work with me, Andy.
Tokar Bort?
Tokar Bort. Okay, hit the theme.
What? No, wait. Hang on.
Talk about Tonka Boat, Taco Boat, Torka Bort.
So wait, can you run that down for us? I couldn't hear you over the theme song.
One more time. Talk about Tonka Boats, Taco Boat, Torka Boat, Darka Bort, Garka Corp, Porka Dort, Dort to Port, Kurt to Dirt, Corpa Dort.
I think your brain is broken. I guess I better go. Thanks for having me. Bye.
If you want to contact us, I'm at Sean Tabaris.
And I'm at Andy Hullbone.
Send us an email at commandersbrew@gmail.com.
You can find out when we go live on Twitch if you follow us at twitch.tv.
And if you care to support us on Patreon, check us out at patreon.com.
And you can find our deck list on tappedout.net.
And if we forgot anything, commandersbrew.com.